the owner or the franchisee is going to have the biggest impact on their
Yeah.
business, right? $1 million a year, more than 14,000 clients. If you don't sell on your business, you're never going to be able to grow.
Before you explore franchise options, take a few minutes to understand how you are wired. The assessment link is below. Today, we're talking with Lawn Squad, a lawn health business focused on fertilization, insect treatments, and long term turf care. This is not mowing or landscaping, it's about results driven lawn treatment. Lawn Squad is part of Authority Brands, one of the largest home service platforms in franchising. My guest is Johnny Rueda, who works closely with candidates exploring Lawn Squad ownership. If you like recurring revenue, route based services, and a science driven home service model, this episode is for you. So, welcome, Johnny. How are you?
Hi, Laura. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy to kick off 2026 conversing with you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your entree into franchising, and then maybe we could jump into more about Lawn Squad, its background, its founder, etc.
Perfect. Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I've been in franchising for a little over a decade, right? I've been in the franchisee standpoint as well as the developmental side. So my wife and I, at some point, we've owned multiple businesses. At some point, we used to own 5 tax offices with Liberty Tax. So very familiar with how a franchisee perceives the process itself, and I usually tend to put myself in their shoes as when I went through that process to make sure that they're gaining as much information as they're looking to gather. Through that process, I've also got into the developmental side. So I've been attached to multiple companies, most recent with Authority Brands, which is probably the best company in the industry in this space. But yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to help close to now 200 people navigate the discovery process and actually become franchisees themselves, which is, I'm sure you're aware, very rewarding, right? Seeing,
Yes.
people that I've helped out almost a decade ago and their kids were little and we learned about, they were 10, 11 years old, and now they're at a point where now they're running the business and seeing their growth through social media. It is being pretty rewarding, right? Because we change people's lives.
That's fantastic. Wow. Very, very rich background. So tell us a little bit more about what Lawn Squad really does, misconceptions out there, and a little bit about the founder's story.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's start with the history a little bit, right? So Lawn Squad is by no means a new company. It was started by our founder. His name is Rob Palmer. So Rob has over 30 years of experience in this industry, right? So he grew the business in Cleveland, Ohio, which I don't know if you're familiar with Cleveland
Hmm.
market, but it's a subprime market by any means of the word, right? You have lower income brackets, lower home values, and it's a colder climate. And even on that market, he was still able to build a booming business, more than $10 million a year, more than 14,000 clients. So it definitely caught a lot of attention from private equity, from investors, and eventually Authority Brands came to play and actually acquired the business and made it into a franchise. So it acquired the business in 2023. History with Lawn Squad is a little bit different than every single one of the brands in the portfolio because Lawn Squad is the only brand that was acquired by Authority Brands that was not a franchise business when it was acquired. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
leadership really took the time to study the business, study the model, and say, okay, this is a right fit for our portfolio, and we're going to be able to capitalize on it and make, very successful franchisees on it. So they're betting on it.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And so I guess let's walk into the model itself and what exact services Lawn Squad does and how they find their customers.
Perfect. Yeah. So the launch squad model is a very simplistic one, right? We have 4 main verticals on which our franchisees generate revenue. So the bread and butter of this business is the lawn fertilization. That's why most people are gonna call us. We also
Hmm.
do aeration and overseeding. And for those that don't know what aeration is, it's a very simple process on which we it's a machine that does poke holes on the ground, so it oxygenates the roots of the grass. It's usually done during the fall, so that in the spring the grass grows stronger. But it's also the main differentiator with our business is the fact that we also do some pest control. Keeping it very simplistic, we don't go into people's homes trying to exterminate cockroaches or rodents or anything like that. We do everything outside. So we do home perimeter pest control, which is when we spray around the house. So that way the bugs don't go inside. And then we also do lawn insect control, which is when we target the ticks and the fleas of the grass. So that particular service is really popular among people that have pets.
Yep. No, absolutely. And so someone that's thinking about, I guess, what's the thing that really attracts them to this model? Because not most people when they're thinking about getting in franchising, yeah, people love the word reoccurring, right? And they know that has value. But what really they're clearly not thinking about most likely pest control.
Yeah.
What has them interested from the get-go in terms of your business model?
Yeah, so great question. I would say so like you said, yeah, most people don't wake up and say, I'm gonna start my business in loan fertilization, right? Very few are there. But we have had really good success with people that are looking for a semi-absentee model. This business aligns really well with that. I mean, one is the simplistic aspect of it, but two is the fact that our brand president Rob very early on identified that a big pain point for franchisees was going to be the sales, and that's true across every industry, right? If you don't sell on your business, you're never going to be able to grow. So instead of focusing resources and time in teaching franchisees on how to develop the sales systems or grow a sales team, you actually build a call center in Cleveland, Ohio. So our sales team is actually trained by our operations team. We use technology for the sales team to be able to look at the properties from the satellite view, so they're able to measure the lawn, they provide a quote and collect payment right there and there. So as a franchisee, when you get those customers, they've already paid. You just have to focus. You just have to have your technician go and do the work. Our call center also handles all of the customer service calls. So if you have a customer that has a question about when can their dog go outside, for example, after an application, the franchisee doesn't have to have team in order to be answering those calls because the call center does it for them, right? We rely very heavily on the notes and we track everything accordingly with software. But yeah, so it allows the franchisee to be able to dedicate between 10 to 15 hours of work in the business itself, right? And we tailor that experience for our franchisees because believe it or not, about 75% of our newest franchisees have a W-2 job on the side. So they're building this business while still, producing income, to be able to sustain their lives. So our operations team is, sitting up with them and saying, okay, how many hours do you have available on Monday? How many hours do you have available on Tuesday and whatnot? And from there, they're designing what the structure of the business or the framework that they have to follow will be, so that way they're not guessing what should they be doing every hour, because when you have limited time, that's the last thing you want to do is guess what you should be
Right.
doing. So they're focusing on, okay, Monday you should focus on this, Tuesday in your available hours you should be doing this and whatnot, so that way you have a clear strategy on what you should be doing, so that way you can build a business. And of course, the retention rate is significant on why this business is so attractive. I mean, across the board, we have a retention rate of over 80%. So the toughest year is always going to be the first year, just because we don't have,
Okay.
you're starting the business, you're getting your name out there. But because of that retention rate, the business scales fairly quickly because you're just compounding customers on top of each other. So it allows by year three to really grow in a very organic and explosive growth.
Fantastic. Wow. So the owner is primarily doing what in those scheduled time? And is it during the day usually, or how does that work?
So again, it all depends on the available hours that the owner has, right? Because let's say they have a W-2 job, so they're working from 9 to 5, right? So maybe
Okay.
an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. But yeah, so it all depends, right? So accounting, getting your invoices out there, making sure that the routes for the technicians look good. We implement technology to make sure that it's a very streamlined process. So for example, this software that we use for the routing uses the same platform that UPS and FedEx use. So the routes are super efficient. But you also, because they're using AI, you want to kind of oversee and make sure that they look correct. So that way you don't have your technician just driving around the city. But yeah, so on that aspect, your accounting, getting your numbers correct, making sure that you're ordering enough product, right? And we have a software that tells you exactly when you need to order product and when you're getting it. So that way you have everything that you need in order for you to be able to operate the business efficiently.
How does the management of the technicians work in terms of if someone has a W-2 job? How is that typically going, and what's that turnover like?
Yeah, so it depends on from franchisee to franchisee, right? So for example, we have some franchisees that, really trust their technician and actually let them take the van home. So the technician, you're like they're taking, they're waking up and getting on the van and starting working, or they're going to wherever you have the product stored. We want to make sure that our franchisees start very lean. So most of our franchisees are going to utilize either their garage or maybe rent one of those self-storage warehouses like the U-Haul ones, to store their product, right? But make sure you have enough product. But yeah, so the technician is going, picking up the product, and then just going to do the routing. Some franchisees opt to, park the van somewhere, and they have the technician come and pick it up every morning, and then they'll meet in them. So it all depends on the technician. But again, I think that's where the value comes in kind of tailoring their experience, because our operations team is gonna kind of help them align what the process is gonna look like from the day-to-day, life, right? From their work to their obligations with family and stuff like that. So that way they're able to have a very streamlined process on how to, execute properly with the technician and having them do the work.
Wow. Wow. So the owner really doesn't need to be involved in sales. How do commercial accounts come about?
So that's where the owner or the franchisee is going to have the biggest impact on their business, right? So to start off, we're going to focus mostly on residential, because that's
Hmm.
the low hanging fruit. Those are, a lot of marketing, right? So, for example, once a franchisee signs, our marketing team is going to do a deep analysis on that territory. Right. So they're going to identify who are your main competitors, what are their price points, what are the vehicles that they're using to advertise their business. And from there, they're going to build a strategy. So the strategy shifts this depending on what the market looks like, right? But yeah, so that's mostly for residential. When it comes to commercial, we have a commercial coach that will help franchisees kind of network in that aspect to make sure that they're going. Because when you're talking about the commercial side of the business, you're talking about like apartment complexes, you're talking about baseball fields, golf courses, cemeteries is a huge market for us. But those type of businesses, they're not gonna really close by them just giving a phone call to the call center. We're giving them a code and that's it. So those type of businesses are gonna rely more on the franchisee actually doing the networking and kind of connecting with them, because they want to have a relationship with the owner instead of just the business itself. But again, if that's something that the franchisee wants to approach, we have a business coach that will help them through that process to make sure that they're, introducing themselves properly, especially, when throughout the year is the best time for them to introduce themselves. Because if you're introducing yourself in the commercial side in January, you're already late. You want to introduce yourself back in October when they're closing the books and the budget for the next year, so that way you know what those numbers look like, and then you can present your option, according to what they're looking to spend.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, and do any owners eventually hire that position to help on that side and then keep technicians on the other, or do they try to maintain that commercial sales role themselves?
Yeah, again, so yeah, so we have franchisees. So it's gonna depend on the franchisee and how much capital they have to invest at the
Hmm.
beginning. So, for example, Team Lake, right in Georgia, he has people that are just solely focused on commercial. So he has salespeople that are going to visit the commercial side of the business. But we also have people like Matt Affiniano in Illinois, that even though he has a really demanding job in finance, right? So he works about 60 hours a week in his job, and he's building Launch Squad on the side. He's very focused on the free time to make those calls, and he was able to close large commercial deals in his first year. He was able to partner with companies that actually mow the grass and then subcontract the fertilizing part of it from them, and then that's how he's growing his business fairly quickly. I mean, to a point that he launched last year, he's looking to scale and expand this year into a new territory as well.
That's impressive. That is really impressive. Wow, I don't know how somebody manages all that. So, yeah, especially with all those hours. So, in terms of some number of locations left, it sounds like you've built a lot of locations. Is there a lot of territory left, or how many? What do you see as a market in terms of saturation and whatnot?
Yeah, so when it comes to open space, we do have open space, right? I mean, I don't think none of our markets are fully sold. I would say that maybe Cleveland, just because that's where the startup, and then we have a large presence there. But yeah, so like I said, when this business was bought in 2023, it was not a franchise business. So 2024 marked our first year as a franchisor. We had four franchisees that launched last 2020. In this year, we have over 30 franchisees already, right, in 10 different states. So we're scaling at a lot faster rate that even leadership at Authority Brands was expecting. So we're growing a lot faster. There's still available space, and I think that's one of the other things that is very attractive to our particular brand, is the fact that since we don't have sold out any one market, there's still opportunities for franchisees to come in and really gather or, you know hone in on the main market of that city or that state and be able to develop a very successful business.
Right, right. And how does competition work? Because I know there's a lot of competition in the space, but some of the mosquito controls are getting into this business to try to level up. But how does that typically work in terms of your approach to opening and marketing and all that?
Yeah, and that's a question that we always get from candidates, right? It's like, oh, I look, there's 10 companies that offer relation in my area, right? One
Hmm.
thing I always tell him is like, give him a call, see how many answer the phone. Believe it or not, one of the biggest reasons that people are calling us, out of the blue or even just organically, is the fact that they move into a new house and they were looking to get fertilization and they just couldn't get anybody to their house, right? Most of the market is very fragmented. There's only about
Hmm.
2 to 3 national companies, but most of them are very, mom and pops that really don't have the bandwidth to continue scaling or don't have the systems in place to be able to answer the phone because it's just the owner picking up the phone. So if they're working, they're not picking up the phone. They don't have the bandwidth to add. So when it comes to national companies, so we have True Green and we have Lawn Doctor. Both of them are great companies, right? But the thing is that there's main differentiators with us. We focus more on education. So we try to focus on educating the customer to make sure that they understand what the but it's gonna look with their grass, right? What the process is gonna look like, so they have a clear expectations, and we
Hmm.
tailor the experience for them as well. So we don't. So one example is, for example, True Green. They kind of use the same fertilizer for every type of grass. So we want to make sure that we do soil testing. We want to make sure that we're applying the right type of chemicals or the right type of fertilizing, the right type of weed
Yeah.
control in order for it to have the best results. Again, a key differentiator is also our call center because of the fact that our call center actually calls every customer 48 hours after every application. Our brand president calls that our pharmacy call. So we're calling every customer. We're making sure that they're happy with the work that is being performed. That's why our retention rate is so high. But we're also looking for opportunities to upsell those customers and sell them additional products to add to the franchisee's revenue, but also keep the customer very engaged and happy with the process that is being done.
Right. For sure. For sure. And it matters. I mean, I use the service, right? It matters that you've got somebody that knows what they're doing, does the right product, because, yeah, people will quickly switch. Um,
Hmm.
when you're looking for, a strong candidate, what are some of the qualities that really stick out that tend to overlap between strong franchisees with various backgrounds? But what are some of the things that you're really looking for?
Yeah. So when it comes to, I cannot pinpoint a specific, like, let's say, blue collar or white collar, because the reality of it is that we have such a wide range. Like, for example, Matt is a very white collar guy, but we also have people like Jessica and John Martinez from San Antonio. They're very blue collar. They wanted to learn. They got into this business, so it's
Hmm.
completely different, right? I would say that
Hmm.
the biggest traits is that their entrepreneur mindset, right? That's a key component, right? They're leaders overall, so they're able to delegate well, they're able to hire efficiently. But more than anything, I think the biggest reason why people are jumping in with Launch Squad is because they have a they have a clear understanding of what their future. They want to have control of their future in all aspects, right? From how much income are they looking to get out of the business, because our operations team is going to sit down with them, build a pro forma, and find a path to get them there. Also, flexibility of time, because once this business gets rolling, the franchisee is going to have a lot of flexible time, right? And then scalability, because once you develop the territory, what do you do next? Do you want to continue scaling horizontally, start adding other territories, or even vertically and start adding other businesses, so that way you can start building your own portfolio and build your legacy for your family and whatnot.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. The first 90 days, what do they typically look like? What's the main focus of an owner?
So it all depends on when they're signing, right? Because there's a seasonality component to the business itself. So let's
Hmm.
say somebody is signing right now, right? Well, depending on where they are in the country. So if the northern states, they still have the opportunity to actually launch this year. If they're in Florida, I mean, the season is already started, so it's going to be really hard for them to focus. But yeah, so as soon as a franchisee signs their franchise agreement, they're meeting with the operations team right away. So you're the like I said, The marketing team is doing the deep analysis on territory. The operations team, Justin, our director of operations, is sitting with them to build a pro forma. They get access to what we call squad school. So they'll start doing their training online. Once they finish their training online, they go to in-person training. We have a 5-day in-person training in Cleveland, Ohio. Then after that, they continue their training, and then they meet with Paul. Paul is our onboarding manager. So Paul is he has his mind works a little bit different. He used to be part of Macy's, so he was one of the people that actually onboarded new Macy's locations. So the checklist with Macy's was thousands of checklists, right? Because I mean the hangers, the racks, and everything. So when he came to Launch Squad, he built a really good checklist, right? So their franchisees are meeting with him on a weekly basis, going over the checklist, checking things off until they get to a point that they're ready to launch the business. They already got their license, they already got their vehicle, they already got the machine, and everything else. So that way they're ready. And depending on the year, like let's say if they're signing late, middle to beginning of the year, there's probably going to be a soft launch, right? So we kind of focus on that. If they're signing like towards middle to the end of the year, then now we're focusing on actually doing a full launch at the beginning of the next year.
Okay, gotcha. Do you also do termite as well, or?
We can, yeah. So I mean, there's some additional services that we can provide. It all depends on the market,
Mhm,
and they're all up to the franchisee. Because on the pest control, I mean, there's such large of number of things that you can target. But yeah, but it all depends on the franchisee. We have access to national vendors, especially because we're part of Authority Brand. So we have a large portfolio of vendors that we can get product from and pesticide in order for the franchisee. If they want to focus on like let's say termites or ants or anything else, we can help them develop those systems. But yeah, but it all depends on the franchisee.
okay. Licensing in the state, does that vary based on who's able to provide this kind of service?
Yes, ma'am. So that's on the every state has their own regulations. So for example, one of the toughest states is gonna be New York, and believe it or not, Florida. Florida is a really easy state to open businesses with. However, in our particular market, just because of the wetlands and the chemicals that are being utilized, there's some scrutiny in getting those licensing. But
Mhm,
because we're part of Authority Brands, because I mean, we're so well connected, we're able to streamline those processes in states where, like, let's say Florida, our franchisees are able to rent their license from another franchisee or another person that provides that service until they get the time in to be able to apply for their licensing. But yeah, so we know the regulations per state, and that's something that our onboarding team is going to start working with them on day one to make sure that they're fully licensed and fully ready to operate.
fantastic. Anything else that you would, suggest serious candidates should be asking right now in their mind, in terms of how to evaluate this opportunity?
Yeah, so again, one of the main things that I always want to convey is how if you're looking for a semi, because the reality of it is nowadays the having your job is not a stable reason to just be comfortable anymore, right? Everybody knows how either they've been laid off. I've been in that situation myself, or they know somebody that is being laid off.
Mhm,
And usually when you are laid off, you're already late, right? So now you start, it's a lot of weight in your shoulders, and now you have to start looking from, how to. So if you're looking for a system that is going to allow you to have that safety net, that if something happens, right, or you're able to maybe transition out of your W-2 job, Squad is going to provide you a really good option just because of our semi-absentee model. We really have honed in on a really strong process for franchisees to be able to develop their business while still having a W-2 job. And eventually they get to decide whether or not they want to continue their W-2 job, or once the business is replacing their income, now focus on the business itself and continue to grow. But building that foundation very early on, like they say, it's the same thing as a tree. When was the best time to grow a tree? 30 years ago. When is the next best time? Today, right? Same thing with the business, right? If you start
right.
today, if you start really looking into it and then start building that foundation, you're gonna have a lot more control of your future. I mean, that's why I did it, right? I was laid off. I started my business, and it set me in a position that even if I don't work, right, I still have the possibilities to
Yeah.
maintain my family without struggling or having that weight in my shoulders about, I have small
That's it.
kids. I have a 10 and an 8-year old. What do I do if I don't have a job and I don't have income coming, right? That would be a
Right.
very stressful situation. I bet on myself. I knew that I didn't want to be in that situation ever again. So that's why
Hmm.
with my wife, we built these systems, these companies that allowed us to really control our destiny.
That is huge. And that takes a certain type of mindset, not everybody's willing to take that risk and or trust themselves that they can do that successfully. But
It's about
yeah,
betting on yourself, right?
yep, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate this. This is a great overview of Lawn Squad and brought back some good reminders of tidbits that I need to remember to help people evaluate it. Anything else that you want to share with us?
No, at this point in time, I mean, if you have a candidate, if somebody wants to learn more about Launch Squad, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I always tell people that my role as a franchise development manager is very simple. I'm here to provide, answer your questions, provide as much information as you're looking to gather. But through the process itself, it's going to be connecting with the right people. So connecting with franchisees, with our operations team, with our brand president. So that way you can really learn about what the business is going to offer. And then from there, design if it aligns with what you're looking for in regards of your destiny and your future. More than that, thank you, Laura, for your time, for making this happen. I mean, you are one of the top producers, one of the top consultants in the franchise world. So it was a real pleasure and a privilege to be able to talk to you today.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it. Thank you again and look forward to working with you down the road. And thanks everyone for listening. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Bye bye.